Mike Cohen has a heartfelt story to share with all of us after battling cancer for many years and most recently suffering from a heart attack. Mike's story is one of inspiration, resilience, and determination to live his life to the fullest and to give back to the world along the way. As a cancer survivor in 2012, Mike bicycled 3,168 miles across America from San Diego, California to Long Island to show what's possible even in the worst of life circumstances. Then, after suffering from a heart attack and receiving a heart transplant from a man who died in active duty while serving in the US military, Mike was determined to meet his donor's family. So in 2019, Mike biked 1,426 miles from San Diego to Jacksonville, Florida. Life has never been quite the same for Mike since surviving cancer and receiving a new heart. But I think it's safe to say it's all been for the better. Mike is just 35 years old, so there's still a lot of road ahead of him to continue telling his inspirational story. I'm your host, Justin Tu. Let's roll. Hey Ultra family, Justin Tu here, your host of the Ultracycling show. Thanks for tuning in to today's very special episode with a guest, Mike Cohen, with a very heartfelt story. Mike, thanks for joining me on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to chat with you and learn all about your story, from battling with cancer, leukemia specifically, a heart transplant that you did successfully have, and then 2 bicycle rides, very long ones that you did. One in 2012, which was 3,168 miles in 38 days from roughly San Diego to Long Island. And then just in 2019, from San Diego to Jacksonville National Cemetery in Florida. I was going to say last year, but I forgot it's actually 2021. So it's actually 2 years ago now.
Good point. I forgot. They changed my clocks.
I know, seriously, huh? Well, 2021 off to a good start for you?
Yeah, I can't complain. I've had 3 rides already. I have a ride coming in today, and I had a recovery ride yesterday for about 24 miles and 40 the other day. So I'm just gradually getting back to start, increasing my base and starting to get some longer rides in.
Cool. Looking forward to discussing that and much, much more. You sent some very nice photos. Thanks for that. Give folks an idea of what we'll be discussing. Some very exciting things. As I mentioned, a very heartfelt story, pun intended. And it's just inspiring as I've looked both on your social media, just on Google and on your website, kind of the journey that you've been on for, I guess, over a decade now.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into your story, Mike, I'd love to start with a quick sprint round of questions, just a fun way to get to know you in a nutshell. The first question is, how long have you been riding bicycles?
I've been riding bicycles total, including not riding seriously. I would say since I was 6 years old, in some capacity, whether it's a BMX bike, just cruising around the neighborhood. I did live in Brooklyn, so it was nice having a little freedom, having a bike to ride around the neighborhoods and the parks and so forth. Seriously, I would say since the age of 26. So it's almost 10 years, actually.
Wow. And you are 35 years old, right?
Correct.
Okay. Turning 36 this year?
Turning 36 in February. Yep.
Nice. Oh, when's your birthday?
My birthday is February 21st.
No way. My father is February 22nd.
Oh, cool. My dad's February 23rd.
Oh, no way. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
We're related by birth.
Yeah, definitely.
That's awesome. So when would you consider that you became an ultra cyclist? Was it your first ride across America in 2012? Or did you do century rides, double century rides before that?
Not before. My longest ride before that, before leaving from San Diego to to Long Island was 45 miles. And then training rides started going up to like 55 max. Day one of the ride was 68. Day two of the ride was 79. Day three of the ride was like 88. And then we just started piling on the miles. And during that ride was when I had my first centuries. And yeah, you never forget your first centuries.
Definitely. Well, I always think, for stories like yours and even mine, honestly, if you start that way, I mean, it's all downhill from there, right? I mean, what can't you do?
Great. 100%. 100%. Because on that ride, we had one stretch heading east from, I think it was from Albuquerque to Amarillo, Texas, and we did 700 miles in 7 days. So I did 7 centuries, or approximately, let's say 6 centuries out of 7 days.
Mm, wow.
So that was my rude introduction to century riding.
Oh, that's cool. The nice thing about doing it that way is that you push yourself to the limit and you realize you can get to your limit and even beyond that. And the key there is to not be afraid to attempt it. Worst case scenario, you might have to take a break for a few hours or take a rest day or something like that. Now, for folks who don't know, you currently reside in San Diego, California, nice sunny Southern California. But before, as you kind of alluded to there, you're originally from New York, right?
Correct. Mhm.
Very cool. Now, Mike, I'm really curious, how many bicycles do you own?
Right now, oof. Right now I have two. Um, I unfortunately was forced to sell my mountain bikes that I had and my other road bikes that I had when I first had the heart attack because my cardiologist at that time said I would never be able to ride again. So I had to kind of rebuild my collection. And I was very lucky to get um, the bike that I ended up riding across the country last year gifted to me by my old bike shop that I used to work at. And so I have that bike, which is a 2019 Trek Damani SL disc frame with Ultegra disc. And I have also a Specialized Sequoia, just a steel frame gravel bike to just kind of use for like everything.
Nice.
It's a heavy beast.
Now, is this the Trek bike that you refer to?
Yes, it is.
Very nice. And of course, in this photo, you're standing with the parents of the heart donor.
Hmm.
Wonderful. I'm sure there's many great memories there. And of course, there he is. And what is his name?
His name is Lieutenant James Mazzucchelli.
Amazing. Love to hear more about that shortly.
Absolutely.
So, Mike, which bicycle do you ride the most? Is it that Trek?
Yeah, Trek is my go-to. I've been getting a lot of road miles in right now. I did sign up for a gravel race, my first gravel race in September. I'm starting to train for that as well, just to kind of mix it up a little bit, give myself some time off the road, give myself some time in the nature a little bit more. Um, but yeah, the Trek Damani is my go-to. I have over 6,000 miles on that bike since last year.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. And what bicycle computer are you using to track all your mileage? Garmin, Oahu? Another?
I have a Wahoo. I have the Wahoo Element, and no, actually, no, no, I have the Bolt. I have the Bolt, and I use that. I also use Whoop for another way of tracking my sleep as well as my heart rate, and then I also have my Apple Watch. So I actually have a chest strap for the computer for my heart rate. I have my Apple Watch for my heart rate, and then I also have the Whoop for my heart rate. And then I have, of course, sensors of cadence, power, all that stuff.
Very cool. Tracking a lot of data there. When
Yeah.
it comes to your bicycle, is there a certain size tire that you prefer using, and do you like running them at a certain pressure?
Yeah. I've through the years from my first ride, I had a lot of flats. So my go-to was the Continental Gator skins. I liked the Gator hard shells for a while. They're just monsters. I would run 32s. This bike particularly maxes out at 32, and I was able to put the 32 Gators. I had the G5, the GP 5000s of those, and just to, since I'm not riding across the country right now, and I love them. I mean, the 32s, it's a little beefier, a little heavier, but I like the traction. I like the way I feel when I go through some, dirt and some mess sections on the road. I feel pretty confident getting through those sections without having a flat. And then those tires I would pump up to about 90 pounds. I just switched over my tires 2 days ago actually for the new year, and I got Pirellis. I'm not sure which ones, but they're 32s as well. And it's the first time I've run Pirelli, so I'm actually really excited to see how they are.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing all that. Now, of course, when it comes to road conditions, when you're biking across America on the two occasions, here's some screenshots of what you were looking at and what you were riding on. Of course, very scenic and a varying terrain. Nice sunsets and sunrises. One of the beautiful things of ultracycling. Now, how about for gearing? Is there a specific gearing that you like using? Do you keep it the same on all your bicycles, or do you change that depending on what kind of ride you're doing, or race, or terrain?
That's a great question. Currently I have the Damani it's 1130 in the back. It's a 5236. I just switched over to the mid compact. My gravel bike has the 5034, and since I've swapped to the 5236, I love it. I love the range it has. I feel like I don't miss. I'm not overspinning for sure. I'm not missing any gears. I feel like I have exactly what I need. I've become interested in a one by situation, but I don't know if I want to go to SRAM yet, because I'm just more familiar with Ultegra and working with Shimano. I've had a 105. I had pretty much all the 11 speeds except for Durace. I mean, that's the coveted, but I have not had Di2 yet. So, I mean, SRAM is definitely an interesting thing because of that one by, and I like the 52th of the Eagle. But right now, the 5236 in the front and the 1130 in the back is perfect for what I need around here.
Yeah, that's cool. It's a nice setup. And again, you are in San Diego. And
Yeah.
San Diego, there are a fair amount of hills even just
Mhm.
on where you are, right?
Yeah. So a lot of people get it kind of messed up. It's when you're in San Diego, it's actually a desert climate. It's not a tropical, it's not Caribbean, it's not paradise. I mean, it's actually really hot. Like when it's hot, it gets desert hot. But then as soon as you head east, as soon as you get towards, you're like, all right, we're riding across the country. As soon as you get past a certain section, your hills kind of, you know, they decrease and they get more rolling, and then eventually when you get into the desert, it's almost non-existent. So you're just gonna have to weather the I would say first 5 days of Southeast California to get through all your climbs. In my rides, I'm always seeking out climbs just because the more climbing you do, the stronger you get. I hate climbing. I literally scream it outside and out loud every time I'm on a climb, so everybody knows how much I hate climbs. Um, but yeah, there's endless amount of climbs and beautiful areas of riding out in SoCal down here in San Diego.
Yeah, definitely. And it is true for those who aren't familiar with California, as you mentioned, it can get very hot, especially there in pretty much the most southern part of California, San Diego.
Hmm.
A lot of those folks watching who are familiar with the race across America, it starts in Oceanside, but then you do quickly get into Borrego Springs, and of course, then are through Arizona for a long time. So very familiar with that kind of heat.
Hmm.
Now, when you're training, Mike, are you training by time or by distance, like other metric?
For now, it's actually just how I feel, meaning like um, I I established a base. So like I got back on the bike in April of not this year. It's not 2020. Right as the quarantine started, I ended up having to stay with my family because it was just really the safest place for me to be, living with a compromised immune system. So I had agreed upon riding for a friend of mine. He had started he's a huge cyclist. He has a YouTube channel, and he established this concept of 25 miles for justice. So I decided to commit to 25 days of 25 miles a day, and to just make that my goal to kind of contribute in the best way that I can. And so once I got into that, I realized that I had established a really solid base of approximately 30 miles for my rides. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see what else I could do. And I started adding more mileage. I was using Trainer Road for a while. I use Zwift every so often when it rains here. This season, and it's only rained once, so I haven't really had to be inside yet. But for the most part, I really like doing time. Like, I like to give myself, it really depends. I mean, sometimes like I like to see the mileage on on my odometer, but I also like to know that I'm getting a certain amount of work done in a certain amount of time. So I typically find myself spending no less than 3 hours in a bike ride now, because now my fitness is back to I could do that. Um,
Nice.
and I'd like to get back to averaging about 45 to 65 miles per ride. But again, you have to have a lot of factors go your way, including weather and timing of the day. And it's very easy to be lazy during quarantine, as I'm sure a lot of your followers are agreeing with. But
That is true.
but yeah, I mean, after, like, once you get out of the house, once you get on the bike, I mean, it's the most incredible feeling in the world, and we all know that. So
Yeah, kind of like we were talking about earlier, just getting started is the key, and
yeah.
you find that you can really push the boundaries, even the
Mhm.
boundaries of laziness.
Yeah.
Now, Mike, do you worry about your functional threshold power, like FTP? Do you do the test in Trainer Road or just on your own?
I'm ready to do it again, because I know that my number has definitely gone up, and my strength has gotten up has increased significantly since I did it last. I'm just trying not to ride inside. No, but like, I mean, I'm probably gonna set up the trainer actually pretty soon. I have I'm talking to a bike company right now that I can't release yet, but I probably will be getting a couple bikes from them, and be working with them. So maybe they could help me set up a cool uh, way to re-reach my brand new FTP. But I mean, you know what? Like a big part of, I mean, I forgot to mention this, but like a big part of like riding with a heart transplant is like you have to. The prep is nothing specific, but it's just a matter of warming up. So I've noticed for my body, it's taken me about 30 to 45 minutes total for my heart to be fully in its most efficient state, and where I feel like I'm able to ride without over pushing myself, over exerting myself, unless I want to, but then still my heart rate is still within a very manageable range.
Yeah, man, that's a good point. Something that a lot of us don't have to deal with. And it
Correct.
just goes to show the importance of having to do a warm up, and I'd imagine even a cool down. Now,
Yeah.
once you are warmed up, are you able to do high intensity intervals, like say they're on Trainer Road or just out on the road?
Yeah. Yeah. I could, I've, I could do, I've done plenty of road intervals. I haven't done any hills. I'm actually looking to add some hill intervals to my routine next week. I'll definitely have the time for it. But yeah, no, I mean, I could take any kind of intensity. I mean, right now my max heart rate is about 165, and that's really up to me, because my doctors fully trust my ability to sense whether or not I'm over pushing, over exerting, if I'm doing any damage to my heart. Um, I don't feel like I'm ever. I don't feel like I have it in me yet. I don't know. Maybe it's just like a self managing system that I'm automatically protecting myself, but I feel like I can't go all out. I don't think my body's letting me yet. But
Mhm.
who knows, with more time on the bike, and um, you know, yeah, with a lot more time coming up on the bike, I feel that maybe I'll be able to start pushing that range out a little bit more if I need. But I've noticed My average workouts are about 130 to about 155, for a 3 hour ride for the most part.
Yeah, glad you are able to still push the limits. And
Hmm.
I'd imagine you really have to be able to sense how your body is feeling and be in tune with that, which is important for any athlete, but
Yeah.
especially for you. Now, Mike, couple fun questions. Wondering, what is your favorite ride snack and ride hydration? What do you like eating?
Ooh,
Like,
ride snack. I would say it's between. I really like Nature's bakery bars, the strawberry ones.
hmm,
Like Cliff Bar used to have these little peanut butter and date snacks. They stopped making them, which is really disappointing. Um, I like having cookies, kind of taking a page out of Phil Guyman's book. Yeah, I would say between cookies and like some sort of wheat granola bar with some sort of fruit. I don't like going too crazy just because I've noticed my stomach kind of gets a little wonky here and there.
hmm,
And then favorite hydration. I love the taste of Scratch. Um,
yep.
right now, I've been using their fruit punch. I really like Osmo. They have a really good. Um, it's like a raspberry. So I kind of teeter between those two, depending upon um, what I'm doing, because the Scratch has a little bit more sugar than the Osmo, and the Osmo is better for training. So it really depends what I'm doing.
Fascinating. So
Hmm.
like you got some good options there. Must
Yeah.
if those are popular on the show, and many of which I've tried myself. Love Scratch Labs as well. My favorite flavor is pineapple.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Sounds
And
good.
those who don't know, you did mention Phil Guyman. He does have a YouTube channel. He does a lot of riding. He has his own Grand Fondo, right? And isn't it something related to cookies?
Yeah, I think it's the Phil's Fondo, or it might be the Cookie Fondo, one or the other.
Maybe they just nicknamed it the Cookie Fondo, but in any case,
Yeah,
cookies involved.
yeah, yeah.
After a long,
You
hard
can see my
ride,
cookie
Mike.
right there.
Oh,
Oh.
nice. What do you like eating as a post-ride meal? I don't mean for like recovery or something, like that. I mean like you just did a long, hard 100-mile ride one of the days out there going across America, and you're just craving something and you want to pig out on it.
Oof. I would say that would have to be Mexican food. A burrito of any sort, tacos of every sort. Um, when you go through the South, especially specifically going through Texas and Louisiana, you have Cajun. If a lot of you are not familiar, or if you are, I mean, Cajun in that area is just unreal. Because I have a culinary background, so I actually know what I'm eating for the most part. um,
That's
but yeah, yeah, no, but like it's always been a feature of why I've ridden through those areas, is specifically to stop in Cajun country for the last two times that I rode. But with the upcoming ride, I'm gonna have to switch over to, I guess, lobster rolls and crab rolls and more Mexican food.
cool. Yeah, living
Whatever.
in San Diego, right there on the U.S. Mexican border. Yeah,
Hmm.
a lot of great Mexican food. I love that. Was one of my favorite post-ride meals also. And whenever I'm
Hmm.
doing a ride down there in SoCal, I love enjoying that. Now, curious, I talk a lot about the California Triple Crown and the series of double centuries out here. We're really spoiled with that in California. Even in the
Hmm.
there aren't many states that have so many. Have you ever ridden one of those or interested in doing one?
I'm not. No. I would say I'm interested in rejoining the Century Club. Um, and really go from there. Like my physical goals nowadays are very, very simple, because I like to like when you're when you're fighting for your life, as I have for the last couple of years, you just want to enjoy life, right? And so I feel like if I'm going to put myself into anything that's going to physically hurt me, and I know a double century will physically hurt me and as well as anybody else, it's not necessarily the first thing on my list. However, I feel like returning to the Century Club might reignite some sort of flame that I've been not possessing recently because I just haven't reached those miles for a while. I really never hit those miles for this last ride just because the max, yeah, I mean, the max ride we hit was 72, but I mean, I'm not going to say no. Let's put it that way. I feel like I've finally achieved heart health. I have physical health. I have mental health. I would not put it past me. It's definitely not a no. It's just not a anytime soon.
Yeah, that's great though. It is important to balance things, and as much as we love cycling, there are many other factors in our life that we have to consider, including
Mhm.
all the, mental, physical health, as you mentioned as well. So glad that you are able to keep that in mind. I know is easy to kind of, go to the extremes once we get into things. Good
Yeah.
and bad, double-edged sword. Now, I'm really curious, Mike. Earlier, you were talking about hating climbing.
Hmm.
Well, I wonder, what do you prefer other than climbing? Do you like the descents, rollers,
Oh yeah.
flats?
Yeah, I love everything but climbing. I mean, I've gotten better at climbing. I still crawl. I'm like, if we were gonna do a group ride, I would be on the back end of that, just because I have like, yeah, I just hate climbing. I mean, yeah, my climbing is poor. My descending is solid, really solid. Rolling is really solid. And flats are like, I mean, everybody else is really good on flats. So, I've noticed like more recently on different segments that I ride around here that I've been, not getting any KOMs, not anytime soon. I'm not that strong yet, but for the day, I've been getting PRs and top top speeds for the day. So I'm starting to notice that I'm starting to add speed and some power to my rides. Which because I just had a Stages power meter installed, so I never really knew what my power numbers were. And Now I understand that to have decent power numbers, you have to climb, um, or at least to use not a perfect negative grade flat is not a good way to judge your power.
Now, talk about a negative grade, going down a hill. Do you know what your max speed has ever been?
Yes. So on the first ride, I got up to this was going through the this is the Ozarks. So this is the foothills of the Ozarks in Georgia-ish area. I'm not exactly sure. No, I wouldn't say Georgia. It's actually more north of that. I would say more like North Carolina-ish. And I would say I think I got up to 46
Nice.
or 46 or 48. I know it's a round number. So it's either 46 or 48. More recently, I've got up to 44 down a really nice descent. I got down 44.
Cool. Yeah, it was fun going fast down a hill. Now,
Hmm.
in in the Ozarks, that was then in 2012 when you're riding from San Diego to Long Island, then, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Of course, that ride you started from the UCSD, UC San Diego Moores Cancer Center, and then you
Correct.
North Shore LIJ Cancer Hospital in Long.
Hmm. Correct.
What time of day do you prefer riding, Mike?
Um, I would say I love leaving the house around 11, riding from about 12 to about 5-ish, some combination of that. I kind of go when the sun is losing its peak, just because a side effect of um, my transplant medication is you don't have an immune system. So unfortunately, I'm actually more susceptible to skin cancers, and I have very little protection against that. So I have to wear sunscreens, sun sleeves, all that stuff. And so what I do is I just try to, I mean, now, not during the ride part, but during now, I like to kind of ride during the cooler part of the day. Um, and during the ride, we would leave a little earlier, and obviously it was, some places were scorching hot, and I was just, fully maintaining sun protection and, um, whatever I needed to just not get burnt. So yeah, I mean, I prefer, I would say from the sweet spot is from like 12 to 5, I would say.
Mm. Yeah, it is important, even for those of us who don't have a compromised immune system.
Right.
Something we take, for granted until
Hmm.
perhaps decades later. Skin cancer is a very real thing, and taking care of our skin health during a ride, especially very long ones, and especially if you're out there for multi days, like your 2 bike rides across America, or something like the race across America, or even a
Right.
double century, it is important. But yeah, I will admit that in the early years, before I cared, I was too young and ambitious and trying to race and go fast. I would just skip putting on the sunscreen because
Hmm.
it slows you down and you don't want to take seconds to put it on. But
Yeah.
these days, I'm much more conscious of it. And even like you were talking about earlier, warming up, it's something that I never really bothered with a lot in the past. But these days, I always make it a point to do a warm up and a cool down.
Hmm.
Now, Mike, really curious, what do you think after your 2 bike rides across America, being a cyclist for many years now? What do you think? Does ultracycling require more physical or mental training and fitness?
That's a great question. I've seen people that have not trained, like for instance, the two people that I rode with the time before, um, to Long Island, and then this time, both of the people that rode with me weren't training and weren't um, preparing as I was. But then again, they didn't have the same condition as I had with cancer, and then with having heart issues. So it really depends upon what level of fitness that you're committing to these activities, in my opinion. So if you're new, I think it's both. I think it's really important to know your body, to understand cadence, to understand how to lengthen a day if your legs don't have it, how to um, section your rides into, or to portion your rides into sections, I guess, small little goals to kind of reach. So I think it's a combination of both, depending upon the rider's skill set and experience set. For me, going into the last ride, I think it was very important because I didn't know what I was getting myself into. This time, um, I would say the second time around, it was more of a mental thing because this time around there was so many different factors that I had to consider going into this ride, in regards of my health. So it was just like, okay, the ride part is really the easy part. It's just a matter of getting through each of the days in one piece, not getting in any wrecks. Hopefully, people are not texting and driving as we're riding past them. Um, but yeah, I mean, I would just say for anybody that's brand new, I would say, yeah, I mean, you need to work on both. If you're a little bit more experienced and you ride a lot, I think that the physical part is something that just kind of finds itself in that long of a distance, and you'll feel what will be better for what you need to do in the amount of time that you need to do it. Mental health is the most important part of every single sport, in my opinion. Anybody could be a talent, anybody could have the legs, but if you don't have, um, you know, the mindset to understand that you just used your 2 legs to get yourself across a state, 2 states, riding a certain distance. I feel that having that mental health strength is a very important part of success, and also preventing injuries, um, also preventing wrecks. Um, yeah, that's what I would say in regards of physical and mental health
Yeah.
for long distance cyclists or for
Yeah, once
ultras.
you're really getting into it, then all the training, signing up for something like Trainer Road, getting a power meter, worrying about all those details, the data, it is important. But when you're starting, maybe a lot of that could kind of slow you down. And
Right.
the best thing is really just to get on your saddle, enjoy a nice ride, and then kind of the passion will find you and the success as you get going. So well said,
Mhm.
Mike. Now, when you think
Thanks.
of ultra cycling, anybody pop in your mind?
Yeah, Jack, the ultra cyclist. I think he's based out of. He just released a documentary. I'm not sure. I'm really bad with names. That's a big bad side effect of all of the chemotherapy and medications that I've been on. But um, he just he's an ultra cyclist. I used to consider doing Ram before I got the heart attack issues. So I really never knew many of the main faces and names in regards of the the long distances. I'm just in awe of the
Here?
sport.
I
Yep,
just did a
there he is.
search. Okay.
Yeah, he's a
Jack
beast.
cyclist.
Hmm.
All right.
And he rides for causes, so that's probably why I have a little bit more interest in him, just because
I
he
see.
rides for mental health.
Okay, very cool. I see he
Hmm.
had some kind of Guinness World Record. Do you know what that was for?
Yeah, yeah, he had the most amount of mileage or kilometers in 7 days or 5 days, whatever it was. He has the world record for the most amount of distance in that time span.
Yeah, pretty cool. I'll have to have
Hmm.
him on the show. It would be
Definitely, yeah.
chat more. Oh, here it is. That 7-day world record.
Hmm.
Ah, and that was in Spain, in fact. Very cool.
Hmm.
Now, Mike, thanks for answering all those fun questions. Nice to get to know you. Sounds like you very much are an avid cyclist and taking things
Thank you.
seriously. And looking forward to hopefully biking with you one day down the road.
Absolutely. Be
So,
riding through your town. Got to be ready.
yep. Now, I do want to turn our attention to more of your backstory, Mike, because of course that is, I think, what really sets you apart and what distinguishes you as an ultra cyclist. We kind of touched on it already before. We know that there is an upcoming ride that you'll do. We'll get to that
Hmm.
afterwards, but tell me about your health, the leukemia that you battled with, kind of that
Hmm.
whole story and how that evolved into a situation where you did require a new heart and how you even became the recipient of the heart of this family's son.
Of course. All right. So, starting in 2004, I was 18. I was attending culinary school at the New York Institute of Technology. I'm sorry. I was attending culinary school at the New York Restaurant School in New York City. Previously, before that, I had a bad stuttering problem as a kid. And so, what I would do is I would always look for um, different areas of school, high school, vocational school at that time, to not have to present in front of class. So my voice would be something you don't hear, and the only thing that it would be my means of communication would be cooking. And so I was really good at cooking. I ended up getting a scholarship to the culinary school. I was I was supposed to be on a cooking show if I never was diagnosed with cancer. That was the
Wow.
trajectory of my career at that point. And then day two into the second semester of culinary school, I was walking to work and I had phlegm in my throat. Um, this is after having a couple weeks of these little lumps underneath my throat, like right around here, right around my jawline, like right around the right here. And so when I went to cough up this phlegm, it turned out that it was covered in blood. And so I ended up going to work, and they're like, "Listen, you have to go home. You know, you need to take care of yourself. There's something wrong." So I went home. My mom gave me tea. My mom, she's like, "You know what? Go to sleep when your dad gets home." My dad worked nights at that time. He's like, "When your dad gets home, we will take you to the hospital." And so the next thing I remember is just waking up in excruciating pain, screaming on the top of my lungs, and um, my dad and my mom rushed from downstairs upstairs to see what's going on. And I was literally screaming. My dad picked me up, brought me to downstairs into the car, and then we rushed to the local ER. And once we got to the ER, there was a stretcher outside. I guess we had called ahead. And once I was in the bed, I was still in excruciating pain. And then they started asking me questions. They're like, did you overdose? Did you do any drugs? Um, and then the last thing I remember is that they told me something about cancer, and then I passed out.
Mm.
So yeah, so that part right there, I mean, ultimately I thought it was a bad nightmare. And so that morning when I woke up, my mom was sleeping at the foot of my bed, and she noticed that I had woke up. I was connected to full life support, had IVs on both of my arms, I had the oxygen mask around my nose. Um, and I looked up and it was just white. It was just bright white, hospital room white, disgusting hue of white that they have. Um, and my mom woke up and she saw that I was up and she's like, Mike, she's like, you're very sick. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, you have cancer. She's like, you can't go to school anymore. You
Wow.
can't go, you can't continue culinary school. You can't go to work. She's like, your job is to fight this cancer. She's like, you're going to be here for a couple weeks, and that's all you need to focus on. And then my dad walked in. He was crying. My mom, my little brother, who's 4 years younger than me, walked in. He was 14 at the time, and that's when I knew I had cancer. And so then we were eventually transferred to a different hospital in New York that was more specific for cancer hospital for blood cancer, because it turned out I had they thought I originally had lymphoma, which is a blood cancer, but eventually they found that it was leukemia.
Mm. Now, Mike, before you had those bumps on your neck and you
Mhm.
had that phlegm, was there any other symptom or indication that you had leading up to that that you can recall?
I was exhausted. My body was. I felt exhausted, and I was 18. You shouldn't feel that tired at 18. You shouldn't have to, fully require a nap after every, you know, physical activity. And so I noticed that like my energy was low. I was extremely congested. We had previously got to a physician, and he had thought that I had mono just because of how busy I was, with school and commuting to the city every day, and working full time, and still being, still having friends, and you know having a girlfriend at that time. And um, it was just, I was just a normal 18-year-old trying to go to school. And then eventually when they transferred me to the other hospital, and they finally um, they officially diagnosed me with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, which is the cancer of the bone, which is the cancer of the bone marrow. And the prognosis for that is 2.5 years of chemotherapy in different formats. It's I think it was four different types of medications in four different ways of administering over 2.5 years.
Wow.
And so this is before chemo was smart and more specific as it is now. So every time I had chemo, it blasted me. Lost weight. Every time I would cough, I would burst blood vessels in my eyes. I mean, I would look like I was, demonic for months at a time because I had no platelets. I had multiple blood transfusions. Never had a transplant. Never had a surgery due to the cancer, specifically like any kind of stem cells, anything like that. I did not experience. But then within 1 year of my cancer treatments, I had a dry cough. And
Hmm.
I remember we were living in New Jersey at this time. My parents had moved to New Jersey. And so we went to the local hospital, and I walked in. I was recovering. I was lifting at this point. I was trying to get active. I started running. I was doing 5Ks, like not officially at that time, but I was just starting to do stuff. I'm like, I feel well enough. I'm not puking every day. I'm gaining weight. Um, and I think it's a good time for me
So the
to
chemo
just
was
start getting fit.
working to some degree.
I'm sorry.
The chemo was working to some degree at that point already.
I mean, here's the thing: you don't know, because I mean, they say it is, but then you don't feel it. Like I mean, when it comes to cancer, it's just a matter of like you just literally pick your poison. It's a matter of um, you know, one chemotherapy which is infused into my spinal column through a spinal tap. The other one is a 8.5 hour drip. The other one is 36 pills that I have to take every day for 2 weeks. The other one is a push that takes 5 minutes and I can go home. I mean, they all were just a combination cocktail of chemotherapy, treatments that were just made to just blast that cancer out of my body.
Right.
And once I had that cough, um, that night they were like, yeah, we're just going to keep you over for some tests.
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay. And then they come in, they rush in, they move my bed. I didn't know what was going on. They moved me into ICU, and they're like, you have multiple blood clots in your lungs. You have heart failure, well, congestive heart failure at that time, and you have pneumonia. And I still had to go through chemotherapy treatments on Monday. So like the cancer wasn't the issue, it was the chemotherapy. The chemotherapy is at that point was just malicious, and that old school terminology of cancer being the killer. I'm sorry, of chemotherapy being the killer was definitely alive and well at that time.
Hmm. Wow. And so you started having those issues,
Hmm.
and that kind of led to your need for a new heart.
Over time. I mean, so like I had finished my chemotherapy treatments. So I'd started 2005, no, 2004, January 18th, 2004. I finished my last chemotherapy treatment on my 21st birthday. And then from that point on, I was finished with all cancer related treatments. So at that point, I just started living cancer free. I was living a normal life. Just gradually was started getting back my color. Gradually was starting to grow some hair. Lucky enough for me, this very very thick head of hair that you see, I've always shaved that before cancer. So when I started losing my hair due to chemotherapy, I would just like pull out sections of it. I'm like, this is way better than shaving. It's more, I don't have to worry about buying blades anymore, cutting myself. Um, but yeah, I mean, I had 11 years from 2000, no, 10 years from 2007 to 2017. I was fine. Like life was fine. And then that was when I had the heart attack and everything. Life wasn't fine anymore.
Wow, amazing. So 2017, you had a heart attack.
Mhm.
That was after your first bike ride across America in 2012. So you had
Correct.
actually done that already. So it just goes to show kind of the rebound that you were able to have, how you're
Correct.
able to overcome as a cancer survivor. You were
Hmm.
able to do something incredible. And then even years after that, you had a heart attack.
Hmm.
Tell me about what happened there, how you ended up getting the heart that you have now, and then what inspired you to do the other bike ride across America in 2019 to meet the family of your donor.
Yeah. So 2017, I just got home from work and I was making some food. And after I ate, I just started feeling this extreme pain in the left part of my jaw that I've never had recognized before. I had a shooting pain in the left part of my arm, and I had tightness in my chest, like really, really bad tightness.
Mm.
And so my brother wasn't there, my ex-girlfriend wasn't there, and so I'm like, what is going on? What is going on? I don't know what's going on. And then something just came to my head to like I just said to myself, I'm like, I think I'm having a heart attack. And so what ended up happening was we ended up getting to the ER, and they ended up confirming that I indeed was having a heart attack. And they found a golf ball sized blood clot in the left ventricle of my heart. And so, for those of you who are not familiar with the size of your heart, make a fist. And about the size of your thumb and your pointer finger was approximately the size of the clot. And so that was in a bad section of my heart because the left ventricle, the blood flows up to my brain. So immediately when I was having the heart attack, I was also at immediate risk for stroke. So they immediately put me in. They did an angiogram, which is a catheter that they put inside your artery to see how your veins look and how your arteries look, and to see if there's any blockages in your heart. The technician, as they were doing it, said that I have the most beautiful arteries they have ever seen for someone having a heart attack. So what was the case was that clot that was in my left ventricle was so big that it was decreasing the function of my heart. So the reason why the clot built in the first place was that my heart wasn't running at a full capacity due to the chemotherapy. And by the time the heart had failed and having that heart attack, it was around 10%, which is very, very bad. So once all of this information came, to the surface, they said initially and eventually you're going to have a heart. I'm sorry. They said initially you're going to have an open heart surgery to implant an LVAD device, which is a left ventricle assist device that is inserted into the left ventricle of my heart to assist my heart's function. And while I'm on this device, that's when I'll start getting, at least in my head, they started telling me, this is a bridge to transplant. This is a bridge to transplant. You will need a heart transplant. So it wasn't a foreign.
Was it this device?
That's the device, correct? Yeah. Yeah. So that right there, if you see.
Tell me about this image of you sitting here. Well, what's connected to you?
Okay, so what you see in the image on the left, you see that pipe looking thing. It just looks like plumbing. So that little part on that's kind of looks like it's separate. That's in my heart. And then if you look at where those, it looks like there's a cord, like on the bottom left. That's actually like the power cord that I had to plug into the wall in order to live.
Wow.
And when I wasn't plugged into the wall, I had to wear batteries instead. So either way, when I received once I received that LVAD for the first open heart surgery, this was going to put me in a better condition than I was when I had the heart attack, because now that clot was removed, but my heart's function is still very poor. So 6 months passed by after the surgery. This is August. So I had the heart attack July 25th of 2017. And I had the surgery August 4th of 2017. And then in January of 2018, I had a clot, which I didn't know at the time, but I went in for a blood draw and they ended up finding another clot somewhere within my body. So since they weren't sure where that clot was, they wanted to admit me so they can keep an eye on me, and they could also get me ready potentially to be listed for a heart transplant.
Wow, amazing. So when did you realize that you actually needed a heart transplant, and how did that all unfold?
So that picture you see with me kind of bent over, like with the phone in my hand, it's the one right to the right above. Yep, right there. That was when I received the call that I was approved to be listed for a heart transplant. So what drove me to that position to get on that list was, while I was being treated for this clot, which they didn't know where it was, eventually they found out that the clot was inside my heart pump. So my options were, you need to either have another heart pump installed to have this one removed and to have a new one installed, or to get a heart transplant. So you can't choose when you're getting a heart transplant. You just have to decide that is the path you want to take. So I decided, I'm like, if I'm going to get another open heart surgery, I would prefer not to be, but obviously in this case, I don't have a choice. It's either having open heart surgery for a second time or having open heart surgery for a second and potentially a third time. If the LVAD had to be replaced, I'd eventually still need to have a heart transplant. So I'm like, let me minimize the amount of times you have to open up my chest. So I opted for the heart transplant, and I was waiting for the heart for 26 days. I was there from January 22nd until I was there for my 33rd birthday on February 21st, and I got the call on February 24th, 3 days after my 33rd birthday for the heart.
Wow, what an adventure of health. So Mike, I'm really curious, for an open heart surgery or for a transplant, I mean, how do they even get to the heart? I mean, do they avoid the ribs? Do they go like under, or how exactly does that all work?
So for an open heart surgery, if you could see, my scar starts like right there. So The first time, which was the first time that they had implanted, they take a saw and they literally split your chest open. They literally break your sternum from there until right above my belly button.
Oh,
And they do that twice. So my scar is a little bit thicker than most because I had the same spot open twice. But yeah, they cracked those ribs. I mean that part of the surgery and the recovery is not easy because I have a lot of funny friends, and to laugh with having an open chest or having a chest that is being held together with titanium wire, it's not fun.
oh, amazing. What a process. So
Yeah.
then you got the heart, of course, that was from your donor up here again.
Hmm. Hmm.
And there's their family again. Nice photo
Hmm.
when you went to visit them. Tell
Right.
me about some of these other photos we have here in the hospital.
Yeah.
I suppose, well, there's this photo here. You're playing basketball. Well, this was around the same time, right?
Yeah, that was actually when I was living with the LVAD. So if you're looking at everything that I'm wearing, that is the heart pump that I had to live with. So that vest would allow me to leave the house. And if you look at like right to the right of the basketball underneath my left forearm,
Mm,
that little like black pouch was actually holding the batteries that would power the heart pump that was in my chest.
wow. So were you ever worried wearing that and say,
Oh
for
yeah.
example, playing basketball out here that, I mean, just like a cable got disconnected or something?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, because I was living on blood thinners too. So if I were to fall, I mean, like my life at that point was awful. It was like when I was home, I was connected to a 12-foot cord and I could not go any further than that 12-foot cord. When I would take a shower, I would have to take my batteries and put them into a waterproof case that I would have to trust. And then from that case, I would have to I'd have to saran wrap the port where the cord was coming out of my abdomen. I had to use press and seal so that didn't get directly wet. And then I mean, yeah, I mean, I couldn't go anywhere without my batteries. I couldn't go anywhere without letting everybody know. Like I went this one time of that winter, I was able to go to Lake Arrowhead, which is just it's like a mountain that's a little northeast from San Diego, and we had to let the local heart, like the local cardiovascular center, know that I was in the area in case there was a power outage because it was during snow, that they would have to know where I was so they can come to me first because I'm considered a extreme at risk patient living with that LVAD. And
Wow.
so but with that being the case, that that pump actually ended up putting me on 1A status to receive a heart transplant. So since that pump was malfunctioning and I was able to live with it and my body was in good shape outside of the heart, I was a prime candidate to receive a 1A heart, which is on the heart transplant list, which is the best position you could be in, period. And I was on that I was in that position for 30 days. And so the day that I got the call was literally one of the last days I was eligible to still have 1A status.
Wow, amazing. It's just the
Mhm.
timing of all of that. What a blessing. Now, the LVAD,
Yeah,
how long were you living with that before
six
you
months.
had the heart transplant? Okay, 6 months.
Hmm.
Mhm. So getting back to these photos then, tell me
Yeah.
about some of these other ones I see here in the hospital.
Yeah. So, okay. So the one that you see underneath the bike with me laying in bed, that was, yep, right there. That was right after I had my first open heart surgery with my heart attack. I was just talking to one of my, I think he was actually a oncologist. I think he was talking to me at that time about my cancer history
Hmm,
in that picture.
interesting.
Yeah. Then the one right next to it, that one was before I had the surgery. That was when they wanted me to not move. Like they literally lifted me to put me into that wheelchair, and a bunch of my friends came to visit me um, before that night because that night was the last night before I was gonna be going in for surgery.
Hmm. for the transplant, right?
No, that's the that's the heart attack. So that's the LVAD.
Okay.
Mhm.
Wow. Okay. Then,
And then that one was right after I had the breathing tube removed from my chest.
mm,
So I'm showing everybody that it's not in my mouth anymore. That one was my first walk with the LVAD, and as you can see around my neck, that's the controller, and in both of my hands, I'm holding the batteries because they were a little heavy at that time.
wow. Now, tell me about your own thought process. What was going through your mind, when you realized you had to have this surgery to get this LVAD? And I mean, fear, anxiety, just were you angry? Were you upset? Why is this happening to me? Kind of give me your thought process.
It took me a little while to, I was never angry because I knew that I had cancer before and I knew I had chemotherapy before. So I knew in the back, deep, 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 deep part of my mind and my heart, my then heart, um, I knew that the chemotherapy had damaged my heart. There's actually a condition that's called cardiomyopathy, which is what I had, and it's actually not very common. So I felt lucky. I'm like, okay, well, wow. I'm like lucky me. I get to be one of very few people to have this surgery at my age of 32 at the time. And um, I wasn't angry. I was, I was excited it wasn't cancer, because I mean, I've said this and I'll say it over and over and over again. As long as it wasn't chemo again, as long as I didn't have to go through chemo for a second time, I'm fine with whatever it was. And once they told me that it was a heart attack, I remember that day I had the entire room cleared. My ex-girlfriend went out, she was crying, calling everybody. Doctors were in and out, and it was just my little brother and I. And I threw him my wallet and I said to him, I'm like, next chapter. Because I just knew that
Mm,
with the way that they were talking, that everything was just it was not, again, it was just wasn't me having to poison myself through chemotherapy again. And I knew that that was the worst part of my life, and I said to myself, as long as I'm not going to that place again, I'm going to be fine. And and for every single nurse, every single technician that would come visit me, all my doctors, cardiologists, transplant teams, social workers, everybody, I would say to every single one of them, like, you tell me what I need to do to be the healthiest I need to be. I'm going to listen. I would never fight them. I would never push. I would never push. I would never, teeter the line of being, unsafe and dangerous. I would never do anything without getting their approval. Like I know what I need to do to live. And at that point, I had survived cancer, and I felt, I'm like, if I could beat cancer, I could beat this, and I'll be fine. Whenever this process would finally be be finished.
right. Wow. What a perspective and a mindset. And I think we could
Thank
all
you.
appreciate that and admire just the journey that you've been on for over a decade. And it's been a very long journey. And I think it is inspiring the resilience that you've had through all these years. It's kind of easy to maybe have, like a bicycle accident and be resilient and after a few months of recovery or even a year, come back and bounce back. But to have to fight year after year after year, and then even after all that fighting, you're at a disadvantage. You're not able to
Hmm.
perform as you used to, and you're
Hmm.
having to deal with other factors which most other bicyclists don't have to worry about. They just put on their bib shorts, hop on the bike, and go enjoy a ride. But like you were saying,
Hmm.
having to even just warm up, being conscious of that when you were wearing the pad, having to be conscious of just what you're doing, where you are, keeping people informed. But it's great to see that you were able to adapt to your new situation, but more than just kind of survive through it, but really, thrive in all that you've done. And again, you've
Thank
biked
you.
across America twice already, and you didn't let cancer stop you. Then you went to do your first ride across America. You didn't let the heart attack and the heart transplant stop you, and use that to inspire you and propel you forward. And so I do want to take a short pause here to turn our attention to the family of your donor.
Hmm.
Have that photo here, up up above here, with
Hmm.
the donor and also with his parents, right?
Yep.
So tell me about just kind of your interactions with them. When did you first, I guess, have an interaction with them? How did you get to meet them other than actually biking there? And then kind of what inspired you to go meet them? And how did that all come about? And then when you did meet them, I mean, what was the emotion when you met face to face for the first time?
Oh, great question. Loaded, very loaded. But um, oof, it's a very unique position to be in, because you're celebrating life when they're celebrating, I'm sorry, they're mourning, the loss of their child. Um, I just always remember my mom, whenever we would be hanging out when I was younger and we would be watching like a Hallmark movie or something like that, and she'd say, I can never imagine losing your child. Or, like that would be the parent's worst nightmare, is to lose a child. And that always stuck with me. And so when I was in this position, I knew how it worked. I knew I wasn't going to get a robotic heart. I knew I wasn't going to get, I knew I wasn't going to get a 3D printed heart. Not yet. That's maybe down the road. Who knows? But um, I know, like from the beginning, once I knew that I was in a position to receive a heart transplant, I remember saying to my ex-girlfriend, to my family, to my friends, I'm like, I want to establish some level of communication, which, whatever level that they're comfortable with. I'm not going to be prying. Whatever the time frame that they need is what I'm going to go by. And I really wasn't expecting anything. I was going to give myself some time once was discharged. I received the transplant on February 24th, and I was discharged on March 12th. So I wasn't expecting anything for at least, another 5-6 months, maybe, to, send a note to the social worker who's in charge of the entire process. And they told you, they disclaimed to everybody, they're like, there's a chance you might never hear a single peep from them. You don't know their circumstance, you don't know their relationship with the person who deceased, you don't know anything, and that's their privacy, and they deserve that privacy. And I 100% agree. So I had established it, verbally, audibly, that I would like to establish this connection at some point.
Hmm.
I was discharged, and barely about a couple weeks after being discharged, I received a call from my social worker saying that there was a letter for me from my donor's family.
Hmm.
And so I was expecting 6 months. They said, like, 6+ months, blah, 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 blah. And turned out it was just a couple weeks, and I wasn't ready. I read it. I learned that a lot about him just in, a tiny little letter. He was a flight surgeon for the United States Navy. He was previously stationed in Okinawa, before he had come back stateside. And he was just a guy that loved his friends. He loved people. He loved helping people. That's why he became a doctor. He was training to become a pilot. He was obsessed with flying. He was obsessed with scuba diving. He loved pizza. Um, he loved his friends. He loved serving for the military. I mean, that was what that letter pretty much summarized for me. And so in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, great. I'm like, I now know who this person is. I now know he has a family. Um, and so it took me about 3 weeks to write back. I wrote back, and it wasn't until I got signed up for cardiac rehab, which is a procedure. I'm sorry, it's not a procedure. It's consistent workouts that the cardiology team has you connected, and they're just monitoring your heart throughout your entire workout. And so I started. I was working. They wanted me to do a bunch of cardio, and so I was on a elliptical, a I was on elliptical, I was on a treadmill, I was on a rowing machine, and I think I was on like a stair machine. And in the corner of the room, I noticed there was a stationary bike. And so I'm like, I'm not ready yet. I'm not going to do this to myself. I'm not, I'm not ready yet. And so like weeks would go by. I started getting more confidence. I started like feeling good about how my workouts were going. And I'm like, maybe I could do this again. Maybe I could start training of some sort, but like, let's go by this day by day thing. And, I remember going up to the PT and like, is there any way I can get on that stationary bike today? And she's like, yeah. She's like, there's no reason you can't. She's like, your numbers have been great. You're not having issues with your heart bouncing back after exertion. So she's like, go for it. So I get to the bike. I immediately get into bike fitting mode. So I adjusted the saddle. I, made sure the pedal was in the center, or the ball of my foot was in the center of the pedal. And I started pedaling. And I had a good 3 minutes. And I was like, I'm done, but I'm not. I started realizing, I'm like, I think I could do this again. And I just started doing it more and more and doing it more and more. And then I had this crazy idea. It was around September of 2018. And I'm like, I think I want to go ride to meet his family. I'm like, he could be in LA, he could be in Arizona. I knew he wasn't too far because, for a heart transplant, you have to be within 3 hours traveling distance of where you're receiving the heart. So being in San Diego, there's really not that many places that, he'd be coming from. So I figured, I'm like, okay, maybe it's like a 2 hour ride, maybe to LA, to Orange County, since he was stationed in Camp Pendleton. That's like right in between, the northernmost part of San Diego County and the southernmost part of Oceanside. I'm sorry, of like San Clemente. So I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, you know what? I think I want to write to him. And then I reached out. I'm like, so I'm just kind of curious, like, where do you guys live? And she's like, Jacksonville, Florida. And so I'm like, oh, I'm like, so wait, so you live out there. He was stationed here, and now he's buried where his family is in Florida. And so I'm like, okay. And so I researched where he was. I researched exactly where he was. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to ride to him and I'm going to bring it up to his family. If they'd like to meet, they're more than welcome to. If not, I'm just going to pay my respects to his burial site. No matter what, this ride's happening. One way or the other, one of those two things are going to happen, or both, or nothing. But I'm still going to ride to at least have that experience, that I could speak to him a little bit. I could kneel in front of his headstone and pay my respects. And so that's what you see behind me.
That there in your background?
Yep. I don't know if you can see. Oh, wrong way. Yep. Right there.
Yeah.
And so I asked for their permission. I got the confirmation from my team. I told them, like, we're going to have a camper the whole way. We're not going to be stopping at sleazy motels. We're not doing anything sketchy. Everything's going to be, as sanitary, and we're going to be close to major hospitals. We rode through Austin. We rode through some other major cities, and we're like, yep, there was our home for the entire duration of that ride. And I'm like, you know what? I'm doing this. And so I just started reaching out for sponsors. I reached out to bicycling just on a whim. Like, hey, I didn't even reach out to bicycling. I reached out to one of their riders. Her name was AC Shilton. And I'm like, hey, by any chance, might you be interested in writing a story about this? And she came back to me. She's like, actually, we'll do a feature and we'll also do a documentary for you. I'm like, oh, now this is something different. This is a different experience now. And then we got on the Today Show, which is really cool once we got there. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to do this ride. I wanted to do it with my own 2 feet. I wanted to do it with these legs. And I just wanted to thank him in the best way that I knew how. And in my heart, in my soul, was to make sure that it was on my own terms. And that's what I did.
That's amazing. Very cool. And then this is your dog here?
Yeah, he was the one who was trying to get on the show before. That is Lincoln. He's my emotional support dog, but he really can't pull me out of a burning building or anything. So he's just there to give me a lot of kisses and hugs.
It's nice also. Makes a big difference.
Yeah, it's very, very, it was very big. with recovery.
I see a photo with you and Lincoln there,
Yeah.
just above this one again. So you ended up meeting the parents of your donor.
Hmm.
What was that like, that first encounter?
It was very, very. The worst part was the anticipation getting to the cemetery, um, because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. And once I got there, um, and I arrived, and I pulled up right in front of her, um, her husband David, and those are her stepchildren. Yeah, those are his kids. So those are not her children because James was her only son. Um,
Hmm.
I got off the bike. I gave it to Seaton, and I just said hi. And I walked up to her and gave her the biggest hug I could. And I remember saying to my heart, I'm like, "You're home now. Like you're among your family." And we had met in the street, and then the whole big group of his family members were there. His grandparents were there. A bunch of his cousins were there on the other side of the street, and then we all grouped together and we walked over um, to his site. And if you look behind me, that's where you could probably see those three little spots on my Zoom desktop thing. It's those are the people standing there, um, just letting me have a couple minutes with him.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was intense. Uh,
I'm just showing some of the video documentary that Bicycle did,
mhm.
and I know as you continue speaking, we'll, I think, see actually the family when you meet them, right?
You'll see me turning into the cemetery. Yeah. Um, yeah, right there. So, I mean, that there we go. Yep. Put it down, leg over. I mean, what do you say? I mean, I really didn't know what to say. I'm like, I said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, but I'm just so happy I'm here for you to see him, and for you to listen to him. I brought a stethoscope and I let her listen. I let him listen. Um, like, I was just trying to honor him
Hmm.
in person without, um, like it was their turn, like it was their time to mourn. It's really that simple. It was their time to celebrate him. He's finally in their home. He's finally back home where he's supposed to be. Again, I couldn't stop getting out of my head that my best day of my life was their worst. And I need to continue to respect that. And I didn't want to be overly joyful in front of them. I don't want to be overly celebratory in front of them. I just wanted to respect and meet whoever wanted to meet me.
Oh, yeah. So many emotions there and so much to think about. And it's amazing just how thoughtful you are in considering all of that. And I know it was a big deal for everyone.
Mm.
And it's such a great story, and really glad to have you share all of this with us here. I think your story is definitely one of resilience, but more than that, also pushing the boundaries of what is possible, no matter what your situation or your circumstance. And you've kind of proven that over, well, quite frankly, almost 2 decades. And so, kind of on that
Hmm.
note, switching gears to what you have upcoming, not just this year, but even just going forward. I mean, you're only 35 years old, so there's
Hmm.
still a lot of road ahead of you, so to speak.
Lots.
Really curious,
Yeah, no,
what
that's,
you have
yeah,
in mind? I mean, okay, let's first talk about your Overcome Back tour, September 2021. So this one is
yeah.
coming up, and we see the route here. So it looks like from about like San Diego, somewhere in Canada.
Yeah, so initially it was going to be border to border. It was going to be the Mexican border to the Canadian border. I had signed up for Rebecca's Private Idaho. It's a gravel race in Ketchum, Idaho, and so that's from September 1st to the 5th. And then, so I purchased a camper last year, and I'm going to be road tripping that camper up to the gravel race, and then we're going to road trip to the coast. There's a town, it's called Bellingham, Washington, which is one of the most northernmost cities in the states, in Washington state.
And then I'm going to either just have my tire touch the border or me touch the border or whatever it is. And then I'm just going to take the coast as south, stopping at as many transplant hospitals along the way. And I'm going to be raising money for COVID frontline workers. And so that's nurses, that's technicians, anybody who's currently helping with like right on the front line of COVID. And also I want to be sharing my story, of course, and the importance of registering to become to become an organ donor, because the importance, especially with COVID that's going on now, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be added to the organ list for lungs, kidneys, livers. I mean, hearts, who knows? I mean, who knows what's going to happen from COVID? So I think it's very important as cyclists, especially among us. We're very, very healthy cyclists, to be able to put our bodies through riding across the country, I mean, any of these ultra type of rides. It's really important that the endurance athletes of our community all have that box checked, because you never know if, we get hurt in a really bad circumstance, and it might where it might be really bad for us, it might be an opportunity to save someone else's life. And so that's what this upcoming ride is really focusing on, is raising money for COVID and expressing the importance of my story, as well as becoming an organ donor and riding along the coast. One of my most sought after rides that I've been wanting to do for years is to ride the Pacific Coast. And so we're going to be taking my camper, my gravel bike, my road bike, Lincoln, whoever wants to join with, and just riding south. And that's just the beginning of more ultra distance rides that I look to plan in the next couple of years. I think I want to do something in Japan. He was stationed in Okinawa, like I had mentioned previously, and I think I have just this innate desire to just explore Japan. I never really had it before, but I feel like with his presence and knowing that he was there at one point, maybe that would be another point of closure that my heart needs. I don't know, but I just feel some sort of magnetism to that region. But yeah, as long as I'm healthy, I'm going to be riding. It's really as simple as that. I'm dedicating my whole life to this. Like I mean, as soon as COVID gets a little bit more safe and everything gets a little bit regular, I'm going to start doing speeches again. I'm going to be doing more projects which involve partners and sponsors, and doing whatever we can to inspire as many people to get on bikes and be healthy and really take care of themselves, and to share their stories. I mean, we all have stories. We all come back, and we all come from, really unique and interesting backgrounds. And I think it's important that we all, hear each other's stories. I think it's, one of the most amazing parts of any day is just sitting around a bonfire, with a beer or non-alcoholic beverage, and just sharing stories, just talking to friends, and just living life to the fullest. That's all.
Couldn't agree more, Mike. And you definitely embody a lot of that inspiration, the friendliness, and just a passion for life, and also using your life as a platform for good. And who would think that you could enjoy something like the Pacific Coast Highway, enjoy riding your bicycle, improving your own fitness and health, but at the same time using that in strategic ways to make a big difference. And it could literally change someone's life, just as your life was changed.
Exactly.
That's a great story. Mike, I do also have this image here. You did kind of mention, so you do guest lectures, you do motivational speaking. That's pretty awesome. I love your story, because it just goes to show that, like you were saying, everybody has a story, and everybody has the opportunity to share that story. Just really a willingness and perhaps a bit of craziness to, consider pushing the boundaries of what they think are their boundaries. And it's cool to see all that you've already done in such a short amount of time, 35 years old. and there's still so much more ahead. So it'll be fun to follow your journey. We'll be
Thank you.
rooting you on, cheering you on, and hope that you can raise a lot of funds and awareness for all the causes that you support. And
Thank you.
COVID has impacted the entire world, so I'm sure many people will be able to resonate with that. And to be honest,
and that's the point of the name of the title. I mean, that right there is the reason for the name being the Overcome Back, is because we're all overcoming something, and we're all going to be coming back from something, because we're all a part of this quarantine. We're all, we all have had our lives affected by this quarantine in some capacity. And that's also like a really interesting area that I've noticed during this time of us being stuck inside, or, not having, the typical amount of freedom that we would prefer in our lives. But that's one of the most unifying things that we all actually have is our own stories. We all have come from some level of adversity, whether it's, divorce, or losing a sibling, or losing like a parent, being born in a foreign country, being born in a different state. There's just so many different examples that I can give, but that we all at some point have similarly felt that feeling of, do I fight, do I push, or do I not? And I feel that most of us are here to keep pushing, and we're not going to let that childhood trauma or that teenage or adult experience fully define who you are. I feel that that is the opportunity that we all could individually have to make ourselves stand out without having to be racist, without having to be misogynistic, without having to be, anything of any negativity. I feel that our imperfections could be what unite us and remove judgments to our community as a whole, not just, different communities, but like the human race. Like, we are all imperfect, but that's why we are perfect for each other. That's how I feel. Like, I feel like that's made me see people differently over the last couple months than I have ever seen. And I'm trying to get the best out of my life. And I feel if I'm just going to take the last year of quarantine and complain about it and not get something done with it, or not do something positive from that experience, I just don't feel it's the best way to live. I feel that the best way to live is to give more than you're getting, because I just feel like it's good to make people happy. It's good to make people inspired. It feels good to blow people's minds of like what I've been through. I would do it again. I would do it the exact same way. I would do my life over again if I had a choice, every single time, because of what I've learned.
Super inspirational, Mike. Really happy that we're able to share your story and again be able to follow your journey. A pleasure having you on the show. Mike, what's the best way for viewers to follow your journey forward?
Best way, you can go on my website, mrmikecohen.com. That's MrMikeCohen.com. And on Instagram is my most preferred social platform, and that's at Mr. Mike Cohen. So they're both the same. It's not hard to find either.
Yeah, awesome. Here's your website, as you said, mrmikecohen.com. To check that out, learn all about you, see the different press coverage that you've had. They could see that video that we were kind of showing of your journey in 2019 across America. Here's your Instagram also. You can follow along with your daily journeys. I'm sure there's a lot of fun stories that you're sharing. And of course, you have your upcoming trip in September, and I'm sure a lot in between.
Yep.
So thanks again for being our guest on the show and sharing
my pleasure.
Inspirational story. Looking forward to having you back soon with your next.
Thank you so much.
For everybody watching at home, hope you got a lot of inspiration from this. Hope there was a lot of food for thought. Definitely check out Mike's Instagram, his website, and reconsider where perhaps what might be possible in your situation. What can you do with where you are, and where can you take yourself this year? Let's take a page out of Mike's book, use our lives and passions as a platform for good. And until next episode, keep spinning Ultra.